Hello and welcome to Talking Points. I'm Dave Kelly, Director of Advanced Media Production at Cal State Long Beach. Today we're going to talk about a technology application known as the blockchain. The blockchain has given rise to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. My guest today is Dr. Mehrdad Aliasgari. Dr. Aliasgari is an Assistant Professor of Computer Engineering and Computer Science. Welcome, Mehrdad, and thank you for joining us on Talking Points.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm sure most of our viewers are very interested in hearing about Bitcoin and what's involved with the whole Bitcoin phenomenon because it's been in the news so much lately. But before we can get to Bitcoin, we have to talk about the blockchain because without the blockchain, there is no Bitcoin.
That's true.
So in very simple terms, what is the definition of the blockchain?
So blockchain is actually a very descriptive name that they chose for this technology. It is literally a chain of blocks that they are tied together in a particular order, that the order really matters. And the concept behind it is that this chain of blocks should not be manipulated by anyone in a way that no one is allowed to change these things. Once the blocks are added to the chain, they are verifiable by whoever that is entitled to verify this thing. And basically, usually you can think of these blocks representing a sequence in time, right? So first block 1, and then block 2, and block 3. They're all together, and no one can reorder them. No one can take one out. No one. It's just like they're tied together, unbreakable, unmalleable. They can't be manipulated.
Right, and so it's an unalterable chain of events that occur. There are normally financial transactions, at least the way we're using it now, though we're going to talk about some other applications of the blockchain later. But basically, it's a linear list of transactions, which are the blocks, as you say, and no one can manipulate them once they've been established. So how is this secured, and how do people gain access to it?
So here's security for blockchain. So blocks could represent records, right? As you said, transactions of something going from one entity to another entity. That's one way. In this case, what comes to mind when you talk about security is more of integrity. And what integrity means is that we want to make sure that no one can change the blocks, right? And so if we can prove that these blocks, as you said, they can be altered, then that's the security. We don't have a concern of confidentiality, like people not being able to read the blocks. In fact, we want everyone to read the blocks. These blocks usually are publicly verifiable, right? The other thing when it comes to security is integrity of the one that issues the transaction, issues the block. We want to make sure that no one can deny that they added something to the block or they created a transaction, right? So you shouldn't be able to deny that. And once it's added, no one should be able to take it out, no one should be able to alter it, as we discussed. That's what security here means. And so security of blockchain when it was invented, the security of it relies on a bunch of cryptographic protocols or building blocks that we were able to show mathematically that these goals of providing integrity can be satisfied if we build blockchain using such cryptographic tools, right?
So let me stop you there for a second. So when we use the term cryptographic, crypto means secret or secretive, and graphic, of course, means some sort of writing or list of numbers and characters and that sort of thing.
So cryptography now is a science of, as you said, like hiding things, right? In this case, we're not really trying to hide things. This is more of like we're trying to provide integrity, right? So cryptography was developed over millennia, so thousands of years, as far as humanity goes back. We always had cryptography because we were always in the business of hiding secrets and especially for the military applications. And over time, we build more tools that will provide just more than confidentiality or secrecy, right? In this scenario is like things like undeniability, right? The fact that you cannot deny what you just did, right? The fact that you cannot alter or manipulate, unmalleability, that this sequence of blocks that are chained together, the chain cannot be broken, no one can change them, no one's allowed to come here and reorder them or doing that. Cryptography is a science that studies tools that will achieve these goals.
Well, we've established the security aspect of it and the access to the blockchain through using those cryptographic codes. Some people maybe had too much enthusiasm when they described the blockchain, and they said this is bigger than the internet, or this is going to replace the internet. But actually neither of those statements is true, because the blockchain relies on networked access for people to be able to use it and work within it. And so the internet is the only really pathway to the blockchain.
So a key concept to blockchain is that it is what we call a decentralized network, right? And this is a very important concept. So what do you mean by a decentralized network? Blockchain actually works in a fashion that we were talking about publicly verifiable records or transactions that are tied together in these blocks, right? So like they call them ledgers, right? So you have this sequence. This sequence is actually distributed across entities, right? And these entities need to be able to talk to each other to be able to maintain this block, right? So they need a way of communication. But the good thing about blockchain is that you don't need to have a centralized authority to maintain the record. So it's not like there's a record keeper somewhere that should be trusted and everyone goes and says, oh, I just need to talk to you and I need a communication to you to make inquiry about something, right? Blockchain is a decentralized and was built to be decentralized. Like that was the promise of it, is that let's get rid of the centralized trusted entity, because who knows whether they're trusted or not, right? Once you make it decentralized, you need to have a network to allow these entities to talk to each other, right? So blockchain definitely needs a network. And in order for the entities to talk to each other, they need to be on a common language. We call them a common protocol, a network protocol, that say if you and me are both entities of this network, we're members, we need to be able to understand what we are telling each other, right? We need a common standard language, right? And that language could be anything. Internet is one language, right? So internet protocol is one language of people being able to reach to each other and talk to each other. It could be something else. And so it really doesn't have anything to do with internet, right? It's a separate entity. It only requires a distributed network, and it's kind of independent of what language you use to talk to each other.
So for right now, it's the internet, but it could be something else in the future.
Yeah, you could build a blockchain network that utilizes a different underlying communication standard or language, right?
Okay, well, let's talk about Bitcoin now. We've laid the groundwork for the blockchain. So the Bitcoin phenomenon occurred because of the blockchain, and there was someone by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto in 2009 that created Bitcoin. We don't actually know if Satoshi is a real person or if it's a fictitious name or if it may be a group of people, but nonetheless, that's sort of the mysterious founder of Bitcoin. And how did the blockchain create Bitcoin?
So the name you mentioned, Satoshi, or either a person, as you said, or a group of people, we still really don't know what it is, and that gives a little bit of excitement because it gives it a dark side. A white paper was published by under this name that explained blockchain and its use in a cryptocurrency that later it was coined. They coined the term Bitcoin for it. And this paper was published, and later this idea was implemented. And the promise, what they advertised, that they said that you can achieve with this blockchain, is that you could have a full financial currency. They later we call it cryptocurrency, that is independent of a centralized, trusted central authority, right? So you don't need a central bank to go and have them print dollars, and you rely on them, and they all oversee the transactions, and everyone has to trust them, and you don't need to have it, right? So Bitcoin said that, hey, we could build this like financial system that there's no need to have to put any trust on anybody, right? And we just create this distributed network of people. So long as all of the, not more than majority of them are colluding together, this network will function, and we will be able to make transactions, pass around money to each other, with no need to have a trustworthy central authority.
So in terms of cryptocurrencies, and again, we define the term crypto meaning secret or secretive,
Right.
or protected by cryptographic code. So we have Bitcoin, but we can also create other cryptocurrencies. In
Right.
fact, we could do it right now if we wanted to. Bitcoin just happens to be the one that
Yeah.
took off.
Dave, Mehrdad coin could be created today, right? And so, yeah, Bitcoin was, I guess you could call it the first cryptocurrency that really took off, right? And usually all the cryptocurrencies rely on blockchain, and so you can call them cryptocurrency because they use all these cryptographic tools to achieve a robust, sustainable system. A system that you can make transactions, you can't deny them, you can't double spend the money, like I pay you and use the same money to pay someone else and later deny. You can't do that. The integrity of blockchain takes away that. Says that, oh no, cryptographically, we don't let you be able to double spend or deny that you have to spend your money. Once this integrity comes in, you could create as many coins as you want, right? And Bitcoin is not the only one.
Mm-hmm. And so banks, should they be worried about Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies? Does the cryptocurrency phenomenon threaten what banks actually do, or are banks actually incorporating cryptocurrency technology and the blockchain into their future operations?
So as you mentioned, there are two things. Blockchain is a technology that has a wide array of applications. Cryptocurrency is one application that uses blockchain, right? Now, with respect to banks, blockchain and cryptocurrencies started as purely like, it was more of like technical things, and a group of folks who were interested in technical aspects of it, they started working on it. But then it took off, and now it became a very huge thing internationally. People are doing transactions, there are Bitcoin exchanges. So now there's a huge financial aspects, economical aspects to it. And so what the bank would say is that, oh, you know, I used to be the one holding all of people's money. Like people usually would invest their money partly in banks, partly in stocks, real estate, or blah blah. Now there's one more a new guy in the block, right? And that is actually, now I have to fight for attention from that guy, which is the cryptocurrencies, all cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin. Because now people will say, well, instead of putting my money in the bank, you know what I could do? I could actually take some of it or all of it, like gamble, and invest it in cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, right? So bank will lose that business there. So that would be a concern to them, I assume. But at the same time, they could embrace it. At the same time, they could embrace Bitcoin and say, well, you know, or any cryptocurrency, or more importantly, they could definitely embrace blockchain. Blockchain as a technology would provide an additional tool to them to solve a lot of their problems. It could give them transparency to whatever they are doing. Blockchain provides transparency, right?
So on that note, we're going to go to the break, and when we come back from the break, we'll continue this conversation about cryptocurrencies, and we'll look at other applications for the blockchain that go beyond just financial transactions. Stay tuned.
Should your company buy or sell? Expand or not? Relocate? Or simply stay the same? If you'd like to examine past and present predictions, integrating finances and people, and make future predictions based on all that information, a career in economics is for you. You can become a part of this exciting field with a degree from Cal State Long Beach.
Welcome back to Talking Points. I'm Dave Kelly, and my guest today is Dr. Mehrdad Aliasgari. And Mehrdad, before we went to the break, we started talking about banks and how they may or may not be threatened by cryptocurrencies and also the blockchain. And as you pointed out, there are actually two different things we're talking about here. One is Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies as replacements for, I guess, the typical dollar exchange, and then also the blockchain technology. So let's start first by talking about the cryptocurrencies. So if banks are in the business of managing your dollars, your savings accounts, and your checking accounts, and that sort of thing, that might be a threat to them if we have all of these digital currencies that don't involve banks,
Right.
which in that case makes banks, quote unquote, the middleman.
Right.
So we can just do our exchanges point to point, which is me to you, or
Right, right.
me directly to whatever the entity is that I want to exchange, currencies with. So in that way, it probably is a threat to banks. But in another way, with the blockchain, as you started to say, there are aspects of the blockchain that could help banks in the future in terms of their credibility, in terms of their security. And what about in terms of mortgages, loans for cars and for houses? And also the title process for when you buy a house, you go through escrow and you go through a title search and so on. Are those things that could actually be helpful to banks and title companies?
So we could utilize blockchain in that sense, in the sense of using blockchains to capture all the transactions with respect to loans, property, cars, any things of that nature. And that will help banks actually. So how that would work, blockchain, as we talk about, is publicly verifiable. It creates transparency, right? Because it can be denied, you can change it, it's unmalleable, and so forth. Well, you think about it, if a bank sells a property loan to another bank, that is a transaction, right? In any transaction, we can use blockchain to actually capture that transaction and say this transaction occurred at this at this point in time, from this entity, which could be like JP Morgan, to the other entity, I don't know what else, like Bank of America, right? Or this property was purchased by this entity from the previous owner, which was the other entity. Now that's a transaction. We can model that as a transaction. Now that we have transaction, we can actually utilize blockchain to maintain all these transactions and make it transparent and publicly verifiable to everyone to see, okay, we capture these transactions and these are the orders that they happen and no one can deny them now. That record keeping blockchain will do the record keeping for us, so we don't have to deal with it. There's no need, as we talk about, a central authority whose job is to record these transactions. We don't need that entity anymore. This transparency could be very helpful to banks. They could work together with no issues. The properties could be exchanged with no issues. Cars could be purchased, because all of these can be modeled as a transaction and take away the whole issue of trust with the central authority not being available, or like being slow, or not being transparent. All of that will go away.
And certainly for consumers, this could be an advantage, because one of the biggest issues for consumers when they buy a property, real estate, for example, is going through the escrow process and the delays involved, and this could help streamline that.
It automates it.
Yeah,
right.
It automates everything. So it's automated, which speeds everything along, and so it's good for the banks in the sense that they can do more loans per month than they could otherwise.
Right. Yeah, it could increase their efficiency for sure.
Okay, well, let's talk, going back to cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, for example. If we're talking about exchanging currencies, and as we've talked about already, we could set up our own currency if we wanted to. We could do it today, this afternoon.
Right.
And when we start dealing with multiple currencies, it's a little bit like the international monetary exchange, where you can, before the euro coin, you had all these different currencies in Europe. So if you took a trip to Europe, you had to have lira. If you're in Italy, you had to have the francs if you're in France, and of course the pound in England, and so on. So if we're trying to exchange digital currencies, Bitcoin with some other cryptocurrency, how are we going to be able to do that? And how is that exchange going to be set up? And is there still going to be use for the American dollar as the standard of value for all of those?
So one question could be that, first, how do I buy a cryptocurrency, right? How do I join this whole the thing that we're talking about, right? Bitcoin or any other coin. There are marketplaces that they usually call them exchange marketplaces. That basically what it is, you can think of as a website that you go in and use your credit card, right? And this is a typical way of like joining a Bitcoin. And if you want to just do it right now, you could do. And you create an account in this exchange place, and you say, okay, I pay you. That exchange place has a lot of bitcoins. I say, I buy bitcoins from you, right? And that will be a transaction because your account will be created empty, and the transaction will be that many the bitcoins will go from their system, their account to your account. In exchange, you give them dollars, right? Now you have bitcoins and you can start doing bitcoins and do shopping with bitcoins. Later, you want to say, you know, this Dave Mehrdad coin is actually really taking off. It's a really good coin. I want to convert some of my bitcoins into Dave Mehrdad coin. And so you could go back to the exchange place that has a that offers Dave Mehrdad coin, and you could go and purchase from there, and they could allow that purchase to happen through either dollars or you could directly buy through Bitcoin. But usually the values are relative to dollars. They need a baseline to say, if I want to compare Bitcoin with respect to Mehrdad, Dave Mehrdad coin, let's see how much of them are valued right now with respect to dollars or something. We need a baseline to compare them, right? And you could use dollar as a good baseline. I say Bitcoin is today, each coin is like so many dollars, and Dave Mehrdad coin is that many dollars, right? And that ratio helps you do the math and say, okay, now how many Mehrdad Dave coins is equal to one Bitcoin? And that's how you can purchase, and you convert from one coin to another coin, from one cryptocurrency to another currency.
And we're talking about fluctuating values, especially with Bitcoin. I'm sure the viewers have been aware of the roller coaster ride that Bitcoin has taken over the past year or so as it's become more popular. It's currently down at the moment. Down is a relative term because
right.
If you got it in the beginning in 2009, you're doing extremely well right now. The value is over 8,000. It was as high as 19,000 at its peak just a few months ago. So there's been a lot of fluctuation in it. A lot of people are speculating in it. But one of the advantages of Bitcoin is it has a ceiling of 21 million Bitcoins. You can only create 21 million. Once they reach that point, they're done, and then it's a stable currency, if you want to call it that. So in terms of economics, people are trading in Bitcoin like it's a stock commodity. But when it settles down and becomes a stable currency, then maybe that won't be the case, and we'll be looking at other cryptocurrencies that'll be kind of like regular currencies that we see out there in the marketplace.
So first, one thing to address is like that ceiling that you mentioned. Where does that come from? So we talk about blockchain and the fact that once a block is added to the chain, then it cannot be taken off, and it cannot be manipulated, right? Well, the way that actually works is that we mentioned that we're using some cryptographic tools. Now, these cryptographic tools they're like mathematical problems. They're computationally heavy mathematical problems. And the way we create this tie between one block to another block is by trying to solve a cryptographic problem, right? And that problem takes a lot of computational resources, time, energy, and so on, whatnot. So you would say, oh, why would the entities of the Bitcoin go through all that trouble to maintain records? Sometimes those records are not even for them. What's the incentive behind that, right? To incentivize it, usually they say, oh, the one entity that is able to solve this problem the fastest and in an appropriate way, in the proper way, depending on the scoring system they do, that entity is rewarded with some coins. And that's how you mine a coin, right? The coin mining, right? And so the coins are given to you through that, right? Now, the ratio of how we give you coins is different. Like initially, Bitcoin started by giving a lot of coins for each entity that solved that problem, right? So the reward was high, right? And over time, the reward could go down. And now we reward you only a little for all that hard work that you go through, right? And they try to maintain it financially. They try to maintain the system by adjusting the rate of the reward or incentive, the coin that is being generated, being mined over time, right? Now, what happens? Do we get there, and when do we get there? And what happens after that? Well, what happens after that? I would say, as you mentioned, it becomes like if we get there at some point. What happens after that is that you have a more stable system.
Currency. I need to jump in here because we're running out of time, but I want to get in a couple more questions about security.
Right.
We've been talking about how secure the blockchain is, but there are some developments on the horizon that could threaten that security, and I'm talking specifically about quantum computing. What is quantum computing, very briefly, and why is that potentially a threat?
So Bitcoin security or blockchain security relies on what we call standard cryptographic assumptions, right? And those are very simple assumptions that we make, and we build cryptographic tools on top of those, right? And so blockchain gets the security from those cryptographic assumptions. One of those cryptographic assumptions is actually a fundamental assumption that we were able to build internet on top of it, right? And that is today is being used in digital signatures. The fact that I said that you cannot deny that you spend your money, you made the transaction, that relies on that assumption of you signing something, right? Now, where does quantum computers come along and what they are? Well, quantum computers are different from traditional computers. Traditional computers or silicon computers, each variable, each register can have one value of 0, 1 at a time. And you have to do one computation to move on to the next one. Whereas quantum computers, what they do, they create the whole concept of quantum beats or qubits. And what it is that that register could have 0 and 1 at the same time. In the sense you're running parallel computations. And that saves you a lot of time. We're not talking about little time, we're talking about exponential amount of time, a significant amount of time. Saves you in order to just run one computation, one task, right?
So multiple computations at the same time means that computing is much, much, much faster.
Much faster.
And that's something that's going to keep people awake at night to try to figure out how to control that with quantum computing skills that can manage to stay ahead of the bad guys who might get a hold of this.
True.
We're almost out of time. I just wanted to note a couple of things that the blockchain can be used for because we promised that to the viewers. How about voting? Could people actually use it for online voting because of that chain that's inalterable?
Yes, exactly. So what online voting, when I cast my vote to you as a candidate, that's a transaction, right? And as we said, we can model everything that can be modeled as a transaction. We can use Bitcoin as a record keeping that is verifiable, transparent, and unmalleable.
A couple more. Also, digital content management, specifically for artists. If they have photographs, paintings, musical selections, you can follow the chain of copyright very easily with that.
Right, exactly.
And also medical records. There could be good use for blockchain with medical records. Medical
records, supply chain, if any movement of goods, right, where they are, how they move from one place to another place, that's another thing that you can utilize blockchain. There's a lot of things that you can do with blockchain. I'm sure that we'll see in near future a lot more applications. People will hear the word a lot more often.
Thank you very much. We're out of time. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Talking Points. Be sure to join us again soon for the next episode. Until then, I'm Dave Kelly. Have a nice day.